Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, September 19th, 2022, and today we are 50 days away from the 2022 United States midterm elections. A midterm election that will define the future of the Democratic Party as they step forward into the next 2 years of President Biden's potentially first or only term as President of the United States. Now, the Senate elections in particular are extremely high stakes considering that the Senate majority right now is decided by who currently is in the White House. The Democrats hold 50 seats, the Republicans hold 50 seats as well, and as described in the Constitution, to break such a tie, the president's party ultimately gets to decide. Rather, the vice president's party, but as of recently, that is one and the same in American history. Looking at our Senate elections for 2022, we have many states that are going to be competitive this November. Many states that we will be on the edge of our seats watching on election night as the mainstream media reports coverage, makes predictions, and overall gauges the sentiment of the nation as they voted on election day. Right now, 50 days till the midterm elections, the numbers look good for both political parties. On one hand, you have Democrats doing better in the Senate than they were a month ago. On the other hand, you have Republicans who have led a lead in the House of Representatives throughout the entirety of the past 2 years. But the difference now is that we are getting into the final stretch of the campaign season. The difference now is that whereas a month ago or two or a year ago, there was a lot that could have changed between now and November. But heading into a position where we are nearly just 1 month away, it gets difficult to see how that might happen. So for the purpose of this video, we are going to be much more closely looking at the races that we can describe as swing states because they are super important. It's not simple enough to simply gloss over some of these states as if they aren't super, competitive, or rather not as competitive as some other states. The core about 10 or less than that states are the ones that we are going to be hyper fixated over. It's not simply just a question of are we interested in them? No, we are going to be quite literally obsessing over the data that we have, obsessing over these Senate elections. And that's just the way that it goes. Right now, the Democratic Party is in a position where they currently hold about 45 seats without worry. 45 seats that the Democratic Party can simply rely on realistically in any type of circumstance for this upcoming election. The same thing for Republicans. They actually end up in a very similar amount when it comes down to expectations. You're talking about 44 seats for the GOP to 45 for the Democrats. So altogether, we have 11 remaining races in what we would call this toss-up column. But it isn't necessarily just a toss-up column. Rather, it is just a culmination of all the states that are decided between anywhere less than safe and further through that. You're talking tilt, which is less than a point. You're talking lean, which is between a point and 5 points. You're talking likely, which is anywhere from 5 all the way up to 15. And I have been, really thinking about the way that we describe these states. And I do consider the possibility that, likely and lean and tilt might not in the future be decided by margin. But as I have used this type of strategy and this type of ranking when it comes down to the way that I rank my states in terms of lean, likely, tilt, etc., I've been doing it for 3 years now. I'm probably going to stick with it as of right now, but if that is to change, I will of course tell you guys in the future. But I think there also is something informative about going with this safe style structure with a margin defined, because you know that states are out of reach even just by percentage, but also by expected margin. For instance, the state of New York is not within reach for the Republican Party, and Democrats are expected to win here by over 15 points. The margin in itself implies that either A, this candidate is really good for a political party, and also that a certain political party has, in fundamental at least, advantage over the opposition party. You could get the same thing with the percentage. It really just depends on preference here, but as of right now, we're going to stick with margin. So narrowing down to these 11 states, they aren't all super competitive. In fact, most of them really aren't going to be the most competitive states, or at least not most of them. Some of these are going to be ones that we really can gloss over simply because in a better year for either political party, they could be rated, technically speaking, as safe states. The state we're going to start off with is a Democratic state, the state of Colorado, where right now the Democrats are in a very good position. This is currently Michael Bennett's seat. He ran for president back in 2020. He has made a name for himself across the state of Colorado, and he won in 2016 by outperforming Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won the state by less than 5 points. Joe Biden went on to win it in 2020 by 14 points. So you're talking about a 9-point shift between 2016 and 2020. A 9-point shift that I think, if you apply to the Senate election, would in fact be a safe state in the state of Colorado. But I don't think that's fair to do, just because our national environment is different than where we were back in the 2020 presidential election in the state of Colorado. But I will say that there's a lot of room to fall for Democrats, and quite frankly, I don't see them falling too far down. The state of Iowa, I would characterize as a likely red state alongside the state of Florida. These are two states where I think that the incumbents here simply offer too much electoral significance for it to come down to a point where I can't confidently say, Democrats have a super significant chance at victory, or even somewhat that is a notable chance at victory. I think looking at the state of Florida, looking at the state of Iowa, looking at the state of Colorado, as I said previously, in a better type of national environment, either political party could have these locked down. Let's say this was 2010, and 2022, for clarification, I'm saying it now, is not 2010. Let's say this was 2010. Florida would be safe red, and guess what? It was safe red back in 2010. You head over to the state of Colorado. Let's say this was 2018. You take Biden's victory, you combine it with Jared Polis it was a continuous leftward shift, which is continuing into 2022. You take that national environment, apply it to now with a popular incumbent, and guess what? Colorado becomes safe. So these things happen, but they are likely states in our type of mediocre environment for both political parties, which means realistically, I can't not confidently say either political party is going to really lock it down. So overall, I think what we can see from our map so far is that the Democrats and Republicans are about even. I think being at even, though, for the Democratic Party is a better position than Republicans being at even, because the reason for that is that the Republican Party needs to gain seats, not tie Democrats, because tying them is what loses them the majority. And it's good news on one front that they will probably win states such as Ohio and North Carolina with relative ease. So why are they lean states, might you add? Looking at the characterization, I just made them lean R. Why are they lean states? They're lean states by margin, but also we generally knew how these states were going to go. I will say that I cannot say that there is no chance that Democrats win here. I also would not have said that about Iowa or Florida or Republicans in Colorado. I actually think Democrats have a fighting chance in Ohio and North Carolina. But we're too close to the final time of the election season. Republicans nominated a very strong candidate in North Carolina, a very lackluster one in the state of Ohio. For context, North Carolina went to Trump by 1 point in 2020. Ohio went to Trump by 8 points in 2020. So for them to share a characterization means that Republicans are outperforming in North Carolina relative to Trump in the last election, underperforming in the state of Ohio, to put that together. So a bad candidate in Ohio, a good one in North Carolina, means an overperformance for the GOP, but altogether, I do think Republicans pull ahead. Historically speaking, North Carolina rarely goes blue on statewide elected positions, on statewide level positions, Senate, governor, etc. Governor more recently, yes, but not necessarily to a high extent. Ohio also, this is a state where you find that the Senate election here typically goes to the GOP. Actually, to cover that, we can go back to 2018. I don't want to talk about the Senate race here too much. Sherrod Brown, as a popular incumbent, did well, won by 6 points across the state, but I'm disregarding that because I want to apply it to a state and a governor election that had less of a bias simply because it was an open race. Mike DeWine running in this race to the Democrat Richard Cordray won by about 4 points statewide, 3 points statewide, despite it being a very good year for the Democratic Party. So even in the Democratic Party's, technically speaking, best year on record in the 2010s, you still found that the Democrats fell short in the state of Ohio. And quite frankly, that's the problem with hyperpartisan states. The Democrats and Republicans can't really contest in them. Looking at the remaining 6 toss-up states, we have Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and New Hampshire. 6 toss-up seats, 48 for the Republicans, 46 for the Democrats. But we actually haven't characterized the lean Democratic states that we have right now. But actually, I missed a likely state. And I should have recognized this. The reason why I missed it is because it's never typically a likely state when it comes down to elections such as this one. In fact, for the entire time of all of my election ratings up until recently, I had not characterized this state as a likely state for any party since 2022 began, but previously likely red. And this state is now likely blue. This is the state of New Hampshire, a state where I do believe that Maggie Hassan, as the Democratic incumbent, will win in New Hampshire by a margin of 6 to 7 points statewide. When you take a look at my prediction history, you will see that after Glenn Youngkin's victory in the state of Virginia, I immediately moved New Hampshire to a likely red characterization because everything was indicating that Republicans would get an A-tier candidate, which they did not, might I add, and that they would be able to win in many regions across the country where they previously did not, should the Virginia results hold true. And as we saw as the months went on beyond from where we were when Glenn Youngkin won, the Republican high of the 2022 midterm elections, you saw that the numbers got better for Democrats, and also national circumstances changed. When Glenn Youngkin was elected, Roe v. Wade was in law. Now, it's gone. And when I say in law, I do mean by precedent. I know how the Supreme Court works, but what I am saying too is that at that point in time, the expectation and the understanding on the issue of abortion was that even if Glenn Youngkin was personally pro-life, there was nothing he could do. And now, he has the opportunity to actually change Virginia law depending on how next year's Virginia Senate elections go. But for right now, New Hampshire, as a state where we have an incumbent Democrat, I do believe is safe being characterized as a likely blue state. So that brings the Democrats to 47, but let's actually characterize some lean Democratic states. The state of Pennsylvania and Arizona are states that I'm very comfortable characterizing as lean Democrat, especially more recently. Now, Pennsylvania is narrowing up. The numbers that showed that Fetterman was going to win by about 10 points statewide were never really believable. They really just showed that there was a lead, a significant one at that, for John Fetterman, but I never once had expected by Election Day for Fetterman to win by 10, 11 points statewide. I had never characterized it by more than a lean Democratic state, and the same thing actually goes for the state of Arizona, which is a bit more realistic when it comes down to the election data that we've seen released from the state. Both Pennsylvania and Arizona were amazing opportunities for the GOP to retain their seat with Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania and pick up a seat from Mark Kelly in Arizona, but their nominees have simply fallen through. Blake Masters is viewed as extreme and unelectable. Same thing for Dr. Oz, a carpetbagger, someone who has no stake in the game when it comes down to Pennsylvania, who only won his primary by less than a few thousand votes. These are not things you want associated with your top ticket candidate. Blake Masters and Dr. Oz are not the best that the GOP could have done. The GOP could have had Sean Parnell in Pennsylvania. Maybe they could have changed that race by endorsing Dave McCormick either. McCormick would have been an exceptionally strong candidate, at least relative to how Oz is performing now. Mark Brnovich, or better yet, Doug Ducey in Arizona, could have changed the trajectory of the race, but it didn't happen because of the intervention by President Trump. President Trump is the reason why both Oz and Masters are the respective Republican nominees for Pennsylvania and Arizona. And by that same hand, he is also going to be the reason why they lose these two races as of right now. Pennsylvania, Arizona, lean blue states, Democrats bump up to 49. So now we are in an extremely close and competitive state as of right now. My most recent projection has Georgia, Nevada, and Wisconsin all in the tilt column. Well, as of right now, I think some of this can change. And I would first change the state of Nevada, a state that I am now going to give the Democratic Party effectively their majority back to them. It's 50 for the Democrats, 48 for the Republicans, but allow me to explain Nevada very briefly. Catherine Cortez Masto won in 2016 against polling odds. Hillary Clinton won against polling odds. In 2018, Jackie Rosen was supposed to lose. Steve Sisolak, the Democratic governor, was supposed to lose to Adam Laxalt, who is now the Republican nominee for Senate in Nevada. He is one of the best GOP fielded candidates that we have seen, but quite frankly, he is not, traditionally speaking, the best candidate that could have been propped up. In fact, in 2014, he only won his election by low single digits. Keep in mind, 2014 was the same election at which the governor, Brian Sandoval, the Republican, won by over 40 points statewide in Nevada. Underperforming the Republican governor by about 36%, well, there's something that might jump out as a red flag. In 2018, though, he did come relatively close, within, I think, 4 points statewide, but still a loss. Still a loss that was not able to be overcome until now when he is running for Senate. But as of late, we haven't seen much data that indicates Laxalt has anything more than a lead in the margin of error. And if you know anything about Nevada politics, they traditionally underestimate Democrats, not Republicans, when it comes down to election data. So that brings the Democrats to 50. Nevada goes into the lean Democratic column, not tilt, a change from where it was previously. I think it could narrow up, but I do not think anymore that Nevada will be the closest race. What I do think, the two closest races of this election cycle will be Wisconsin and Georgia. Herschel Walker, despite making a bunch of gaffes on the campaign trail, despite making a bunch of mistakes, is still in a very competitive position when it comes down to the Senate race. He's actually performing worse, I would say, campaign-wise compared to Dr. Oz, but he's doing better electorally, and I don't know what the reason is for that. But as of right now, I would say the state of Georgia is a tilt Democratic state, which, yes, brings the Democrats to 51, but the Republican Party has a silver lining in that I still expect Ron Johnson to win in the state of Wisconsin. It is becoming more difficult for me to see how Ron Johnson does pull away in this Senate race, but right now I still think he's the favorite. For the state of Georgia, I've been strong holding on to that Raphael Warnock will win his election in the state. And I think that it is going to be true, especially if it heads to a runoff election, because Democrats, as they did in 2021, will divert any and all resources into that final state. And it's not as if they hadn't won it before. The state of Georgia is a fascinating state when it comes down to how candidate quality really seems to have little to no impact on the overall electability for Herschel Walker, at least to the extent that is impacting Dr. Oz. But it also helps that Brian Kemp is also on the ballot, and he is quite popular. As for the state of Wisconsin, I will say that Ron Johnson just has surprised us so many times. And quite frankly, I don't want to be wrong. I think there is a lot of hope for Mandela Barnes, hope that was not there months ago. Hope and possibility that he could win when a year ago we entirely wrote him off the possibility and treated him as this sacrificial lamb when it came down to electoral politics. Well, that's the same way people looked at Warnock and Ossoff, and that quite frankly didn't turn out too well for those who regarded them as such. Right now I would say Mandela Barnes is within striking distance at the bare minimum of winning this Senate seat. But there's also a very real possibility that as it stands right now, it holds true and the Republicans hold on to it. Ron Johnson has made a bunch of mistakes, especially over the past 6 years, and I don't know if he would even be electable in any other year slightly better for the Democratic Party. But because we are in a national environment 6 points to the right of the nation from 2020, 7 points from 2018, at least based off of polling data, actual numbers, 7 points from 2018, 4 points or 3 points from 2020, Wisconsin simply is not that state to go. I could see it happening. I could see it happening in a month from now if the numbers get better, if the trajectory and style of the race gets better for Mandela Barnes. But as of right now, I do think that Ron Johnson narrowly holds on, and I think it's enough for me to say that it is a tilt Republican state. So in the final map here, 51 for the Democrats, 49 for the Republicans. Democrats flip Pennsylvania, hold everything else. Republicans hold everything else as well. We're talking a very slim majority. Democrats don't get through the filibuster, but what they do get is an expanded majority, which means they enter into future elections and 2022 with, technically speaking, some type of electoral mandate. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.